Hey, Chris Lippe here with special guest Barrett Jones, who is the producer and mix engineer on the Nirvana song we are reviewing today, Oh the Guilt.
Oh, the Guilt.
And you did a couple more that are on this compilation as well, right? Curmudgeon
and Return of the Rat. They were all slated for different things. This was early in 1992. The studio was my first house in Seattle, which was not a studio. It was a basement that had no separation, no treatment, no nothing. It was just a little teeny room with a 6.5-foot ceiling.
So nuts.
And I had just gotten my 1/2-inch 8-track sent to me, shipped to me from my dad, shipped it on a pallet with all, I had a little mixer and my very rudimentary stuff, like hardly anything.
But you were on the ground floor of what would become like an entire movement. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty awesome. So
we were talking about what songs that you were there for that Kurt recorded and which songs you'd like to talk about from a vocal perspective. And you thought,
right.
Oh, the Guilt would be pretty...
Yeah, especially for your style where you're teaching screaming and between notes and screaming. And Kurt was a master.
Yeah.
I mean, his pitch was so good. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, his screaming was so good.
Yeah, and even when he was like off, it didn't sound off. Right?
Yeah, because he always knew when to come back to the note.
Yeah, so
and
awesome.
This song in particular is a really good presentation of that style. Like the verses are, the melody is totally there, and then the chorus is just crazy screaming, but still has the note that you want.
And it's worth, touching a little bit on the way it was recorded. Like you said, you hardly had anything. Yeah. But what we're hearing, I mean, it still sounds so good, even though it was this very rudimentary recording. May I just say that the drum sound is just incredible for being in your, in
a teeny room with, no real condenser mics or anything. It was probably just 57s. I don't even think I probably had overheads in there, but it was probably a 57 on the toms and the snare and probably even in the kick. I don't even think I had a real kick mic then.
Yeah, but part of it's a lot of just the way that Dave hit the drums, right?
Drum sounds are 95% the way the drummer plays.
Yeah, so nuts.
She seems to think, she seems to weak, she takes a week, get out of wreck. She likes to see, she likes to see, she likes to think.
Not even any doubled vocals at this point.
No, not at all. I mean, it was an 8-track, so...
Yeah, you didn't have much.
The thing that Kurt was so great about was repetitive lines.
Oh, yeah.
Not just lyrically, but melodically. And, he starts off with the she every line, but just changes like one or two things per line.
Yeah. In the writing, you develop this sense of familiarity right away.
Exactly.
Because he's constantly singing in hooks.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there are it's not perfect pitch. I mean, but because of his attitude, it almost makes the pitch better.
Well, Kurt was really good at showing the attitude, but his pitch was actually really spot on. He'd be...
If you graph that, it would be like...
He would get there eventually on it.
Yeah.
I mean, he sort of moves around it, but... The notes are always there when they need to be, when he wants them to be.
She likes the sound, she likes to stand, she can't afford to sit. She likes to be, she likes to be, she likes to be, she's hit to go.
Yeah, you hear the note. It's a perfectly on-pitch note behind that beautiful grit.
He cracks above and below it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that is just finding that note and pushing as hard as you can where it just cracks and goes either way. And he was the master at that.
And he wasn't afraid to crack. And I've talked about that a lot on the channel, right? There's these little things, if you listen really carefully, that most vocalists would shy away from entirely, right? If they were to lean into a scream like this and then, those little like weird cracks in there, they wouldn't lean into that, and then they'd miss the opportunity. But he has the unique ability, which we can all hone, but to lean into those imperfections and embrace them, and then put masterful pitch control behind it. Right there, but I love that he has that like that. He's letting his voice bounce, and then he lets his voice even crack completely up into head voice.
The notes are there.
Yeah, but then he layers it. And then he lets his voice do that.
Yeah.
Which would be completely inappropriate if the attitude wasn't there.
Yeah.
She likes to think, she seems to weak, takes all the rent. She likes time, she owns the time, she buys time, has supplement. She seems to weak, she likes to see, she likes to think, she has all the rent. She likes to stand, she likes to stand, she likes to stand, she likes to go.
So blistery.
And what a great line. She likes to go.
Yeah, right?
I don't even think he had all the lyrics for this. I mean, they had pretty much wrote these songs that day. We did the 3 songs that day.
Uh-huh.
And they were just, they just came and kind of jammed them out and recorded them. And, he just has the phrasing.
Uh-huh.
And it just kind of changes a word here and there every time. And then he had the chorus and...
It makes a hook. It makes a good song. I've talked about this on the channel too, where part of what makes his screaming so good is the fact that it's abandoned and slightly desperate sounding as opposed to powerful and confident. I mean, there is confidence there, but that's not the first word you think about.
Abandoned, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And so if you're going at something, and you were actually coaching me through this in the studio with my screaming the other day, this idea that you can have a scream that's like, yeah! And there's like a consistency about it.
Yeah.
But you were trying to actually get me to be more like this, where there's desperation on either side, where you're almost pursuing the vulnerability even more. So it's almost like you've got this note, like he has, and then letting it fall apart. And I've talked about this fall apart aspect, but one thing I've been more in tune with since you were coaching me through some things the other day was being more on the edge of vulnerability. So that you get more of that abandon. Where it's okay to let it go back and forth a little bit and pursue that balance, as opposed to just going, either all scream or all note.
Right.
There's the note, right? The note's there.
It falls apart straight into the totally crazy fall apart solo.
Yeah, and
it's like the vibe is so perfect for that.
The solo is falling apart, and he's doing almost like this, and it's totally okay. That tone right there. She seems.
Yeah.
There's that like compression sound that he's got, but his face, he's just totally deadpan. See, so there's this aggression.
It's the ultimate in Slacker, the essence of the Slacker movement.
You hear this pent up attitude behind it that I think it's not just, I'm gonna lay down and be completely detached and aloof. This is not aloof.
No.
This is angry Slacker.
Yeah.
Because of the compression. Because of the
It's cynical.
yeah. Yeah.
Takes a week to get over it. She likes to see, she likes to see, she likes to think she has to honor it. She likes the sound, she likes the sound.
You notice more because there's less production here. It's like a live recording in that there's not the doubling, but you can hear better than a typical live recording because it was mixed too.
Right.
She likes to stand, she can't afford to sit. She likes to be, she likes to be, she likes to be, she likes to go, go, go.
There's a remarkable consistency though in the midst of all of that abandon.
Yep.
Which is what I think
That's what made them so great. Yeah.
And even when there's not consistency, sorry to stop it again so much.
Right.
Even when there is the cracks and stuff like that, because the support and
the band.
and the
who are
band
totally on it. There's just a riff. Basically, they're all doing the same thing.
yeah,
And it's so tight, and all the sounds are cool.
the energy is undeniable, and I think that makes those cracks. His voice, the energy is undeniable as well,
Wow.
and so those cracks aren't a big deal. They almost help. So good.
Yeah. So in the very beginning of the song, you'll hear Kurt with the lighter going.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all. That was fun. And his guitar tone on this is pretty. He always had a really interesting guitar rig set up. He had a tube preamp, a Mesa tube preamp, a rack mount one.
Okay.
That he ran through a solid state PA amp.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a rack mount
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Into 412 cabinets. So it's really interesting combo of, front end tubes, but all the power was totally transistor.
Yeah.
So it's really sharp.
Okay.
That comes through here. And then the DS1 or whatever, the orange distortion.
Yeah. Favorite distortion pedal of all time.
That was his distortion,
Huh.
That's all he had was that distortion and a small stone phaser.
Thank you so much for going through this. This is absolutely incredible to go through a Kurt song with the guy who recorded it. Really awesome.